Hi, I'm Chike Coleman of the Wheelchair Watcher. This is Real Reviews, the show where I talk to you about movies and television and sometimes other things that I've been watching. This week, Chuck Kaplinsky, who writes for the News Gazette and the Illinois Times, is not with us. So I'm going to be talking to you about the different things that I've been watching this week, mainly of which is the Cloverfield duology. This time around, Cloverfield was first opened in 2008. It's a found footage type monster movie which stars the like of Lizzie Kaplan, T.J. Miller, Michael Stahl, and Mike Vogel. The premise of Cloverfield is that five people go to a party in New York to celebrate the going away of one of their friends named Rob. And while they're at this party, New York is attacked by a mysterious force. And the whole film is basically centered around them trying to escape this disaster that has engulfed their city. I really liked the idea behind Cloverfield. Specifically, the viral marketing spoke to me when I originally saw trailers for Cloverfield. And I didn't have the good fortune of seeing that film in theaters. However, when I did eventually sit down to see it, I saw a lot of glaring problems in the dialogue of the film, specifically the speeches characters would have to each other about what was going on and their reactions to big disastrous events as they would unfold. The one character I really did like in this film is T.J. Miller. He is better known now for a TV show called Silicon Valley, but for me, Cloverfield was where I really got introduced to how funny this actor can actually be. He's also appeared in Daredevil. And Lizzie Kaplan, who has now found her home on Showtime's Masters of Sex, made her big debut in Cloverfield. And here's my thing. I love monster movies. I love the creation of the monster. I love how the monster feels wronged by people and thus lashes out. But that's really not the case in Cloverfield. Really, the monster basically just attacks New York, and it's about these people being reactionary to the destruction going on around them. And while that could be a fun and interesting premise and something that could be very engaging for audiences, these people were my age, and I felt that during no point in the movie could I ever relate to them or their struggle. It seemed like a very classic first world problem type of movie, and I was really struggling to get through it. What I did find enjoyment in, however, is the creature effects. The creature effects were very visually impressive, and the thriller element of not knowing where this monster is and when he's going to come about to, destroy more of the city was the genuine thrilling aspect of the film for me, and what made it intriguing for me to watch in the first place, and what ultimately had me finish the film all the way through, because there were a few points at which I felt like stopping would have been a better option. Overall, Cloverfield isn't really the strongest of films, and I find that surprising considering that it was basically produced by J.J. Abrams' Bad Robot Company, which is now famous for both of the Star Trek films and now 10 Cloverfield Lane. I feel like more effort should have been placed on giving the characters all a bit more of a backstory than was given in the film, and that would have endeared me to the characters when they were in times of turmoil or trouble. And that's really what my take is on Cloverfield. It's a solid movie when it wants to be in thriller elements, but overall the dialogue between the characters makes the film far too cheesy to be nothing more than a casual watch. This is in complete and direct contrast to 10 Cloverfield Lane, a very well shot, well produced film by the same Bad Robot Company that J.J. Abrams owns. But this time around, there's an actual director, Dan Trachtenberg, who's directing Mary Elizabeth Winstead, John Goodman, and a third actor that I'll remember of the name of momentarily, John Gallagher Jr., who is famous for The Newsroom. So the premise behind 10 Cloverfield Lane is this. You have a woman named Michelle who is basically letting go of a specific part of her life and going on a completely new journey. That journey is truncated when she suffers a severe car accident and finds herself in a bunker when she wakes up from the accident. The man then tells her, "I saved you from this horrific car accident you were in. You should be thanking me because there's something horrible going on outside. We don't know what it is or who it is, so you should be glad that you're safe with me." And while this idea may sound strange to the average viewer because of what we slowly learn about Michelle, it's a really intriguing idea of fearing something that you really can't see. And are there really, aliens or monsters invading the city? We don't know at this point in Cloverfield Lane. That's the most interesting thing about it. It's really a mind game between Michelle and the two other people that are inhabiting the bunker. And what is most amazing about this film is its use of sound as a misdirect for all of the other things going on in the film. You have Michelle basically slowly adjusting to her life in the bunker and really learning how to coexist with these two other people, one of which is played by John Goodman, the other of which, Emmett, is played by John Gallagher Jr., and you don't know whether to trust what John Goodman's character is saying or completely think this guy is crazy and try and escape. And to be fair, the great thing about this film is Michelle as a character is very instinctive. She doesn't really rest on her laurels and say, "Oh, this is where I'm just going to stay because this guy says it's safe." She wants to investigate. She wants to find out what happened above the surface. And that conflict within her about who to trust and who to believe is really what carries a multitude of the story. And there are many layers to this because it's about the fact that monsters don't necessarily have to exist in the outside world. They can exist within the people you already know. And that's what makes this tension-filled ride so exhilarating, is, again, because you don't know who to trust. You get an excellent performance from John Goodman, who basically goes from 0 to 60 in 2 seconds based on how Michelle reacts to things he's telling her. Also, John Gallagher Jr.'s Emmett, a guy who actually helped John Goodman's character build the bunker, has some great exceptional scenes as well, where we learn about his past and what it took for him to be in the bunker in the first place. And this film is great pretty much 90% of the way through. It's that last 15 to 20 minutes that really takes you out of the film, because you're expecting something to happen, but you don't know what it is, and by the time it does happen, it feels completely unnecessary based on all the tension and all the claustrophobia you've already experienced with Michelle being in this bunker. It's a really strong and exceptional film that really highlights, humanity and someone else's lack of humanity and willingness to stretch the bounds of the truth to be able to have company within that bunker, or to be able to have support of his theories within that bunker. John Goodman's character is exceptional. This is a film that I think, for a first-time director, is very, very solidly produced and very strong in terms of its storytelling, its use of theme and tension, and its use of character, because everybody has a story, and the story is parceled out so well between all these characters that you really do genuinely grow to care for all of them, no matter how they behave throughout the film. 10 Cloverfield Lane is my first big surprise of 2016, and it's a film that I think you all should go see because it's exceptional. The second thing that I wanted to cover, other than those two movies, is Better Call Saul. Now, Better Call Saul has had an interesting run of its second season. We basically finished off the first season basically entirely being in Jimmy McGill's corner in terms of being a lawyer and, wanting to do his own thing, but also knowing that he can't use shortcuts to do everything he wants to do. With Jimmy now still working at a law office, he found himself in a bit of trouble last week because he made a commercial which was without the partner's permission, even though he was the head of a media department. And basically, he's trying to make up for the mistake he made in involving his romantic love interest, Kim Wexler, in his affairs of trying to get more Sandpiper clients involved in this giant lawsuit that his law firm is dealing with at the moment. And this is an episode all about the choices people make and how those choices affect their lives. For Jimmy, it's a choice of, do I help out my friend or do I just continue on with my work and try to be the best person I can be? For Kim, it's, do I continue to trust Jimmy as a person or do I let him go? Because he's obviously done some not so smart things in the not so recent past. And for Chuck, it's like, can I trust my brother to actually slowly become a real lawyer, or does he need to be, kicked out on his ear? Also, we have Mike dealing with a particularly difficult situation this week, as he is dealing from the fallout of the fact that one of his employers asked him to murder a cartel gang member named Tuco, and he chose not to murder that cartel member and instead just take a beating for it and get this guy banged up in jail. And now, at the end of the episode, we learn that, Tuco shouldn't be in jail according to his uncle. And the uncle is someone we all know from Breaking Bad. I found this to be a very interesting scene between those two men because it's not even that guy, Tio, exuded any form of strong-armed power against Mike Ehrmantraut. He basically just said, look, here's the deal. My nephew should not be in prison for 8 to 10 years. Maybe a few months, maybe a year, but no longer than that because he's a good boy. And if you do this for me, then I'll give you $5,000 in compensation. So now Mike has to make a choice. And next week, Kim Wexler has to make a choice about how she feels about Jimmy. She had a conversation with Jimmy's brother Chuck this week about who Jimmy really is as a person. And I'm not sure whether she's starting to believe it or not. But the crux of how these people are morally or not flexible in some ways and not others is really what's making this season of Better Call Saul such a strong season to begin with. I love all these characters. All these characters are so deeply complex that no matter what decision they make, good or bad, I will be pleasantly surprised and happy. So I'm really excited to see what happens with that next week. I really think that the strength of Better Call Saul is in its cast. Bob Odenkirk particularly is displaying some nice vulnerabilities with his character of Jimmy McGill, and I can't wait to see what happens when he fully transforms into Saul Goodman. Now, lastly today, one of the other small things that I wanted to talk about today is the fact that it was announced this week that we are getting an Indiana Jones 5. Directed by Steven Spielberg and written by David Coep, who penned the previous entry in the franchise, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Now, let me tell you why I think Indiana Jones 5 is actually going to work. It's because George Lucas is not involved in any way, shape, or form, so far as I know, with this story. George had an adamant mission over the last decade before Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was released that he wanted to do a plot centering around Roswell and the invasion of aliens, and Steven Spielberg said, no, that idea is too crazy to actually work, because that's not what Indiana Jones is about. He's an archaeologist. He's about finding relics of the past and, making them relevant in the present, that sort of a thing. That's the kind of old adventure serial we should be going for, not sci-fi experimental stuff. Well, eventually George Lucas won out, and Steven Spielberg, of course, went with that story. I'm sure Steven Spielberg is now kicking himself handedly for going with George Lucas's suggestion, and the fact that the writer from Kingdom of the Crystal Skull coming back for this fifth entry does scare a lot of people, and that's because the fourth one was so awful, even though it did make money. Here's my take on it. By the time Harrison Ford is ready to shoot Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, he will be 73. He can't do many of the action stunts he used to do, but he has that level of charm that is innate within Indiana Jones. And that alone is enough for me to want to go see Indiana Jones 5, whatever the premise may be. It also may be Harrison Ford's final Indiana Jones film, because he is of that age. And frankly, I'm excited. I'm excited because I'm excited to get back to that state of just plain old adventure of Indiana Jones looking for a treasure or an item or a city. And that's not at all what Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was about. It was about piecing together the idea that something beyond our own understanding may exist. And truth be told, that's been done before. It's called Close Encounters of the Third Kind. If you haven't seen it, look it up. Or E.T. as well would probably fall into that category. Explaining the unexplainable, essentially. And I really think Indiana Jones 5 could be a strong entry in the series and make up for all the mistakes made in Indiana Jones 4, especially the CGI monkeys. I really, really like the idea that they're bringing this back, and that was the big piece of news coming out of this week. The other piece of news that I found out this week from Chike Coleman before he informed me he was not able to attend this week was that there is going to be a second Jungle Book movie aside from the Jungle Book that we are getting this year, and that film is called Jungle Book Origins. And Shere Khan in that Jungle Book will be voiced by Benedict Cumberbatch, and Mowgli's mother will be played by Frida Pinto. So that's going to be an interesting film to watch out for. I'm looking forward to next week when Chike Coleman is back so that we can talk about Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice. But as well, we'll be able to finally, I hope, talk about the first few episodes of Daredevil Season 2. Until then, I'm Chike Coleman, and you can find my work at www.wheelchairwatcher.com. And this has been Real Reviews. I'll see you guys next week. Bye, guys.